So when your parents ask me, Adam, take those out of your ear. When they ask me what's going on, I'm gonna say, refer to this day's notes and take a look and listen to what's going on in this class. Life. Obviously, you'd write the date, assuming that you don't want to again be asking, when did this happen? So life. Yes, I've said, when I speak, I write it down. If you're listening and looking, it makes sense. I'm just letting you know. You have to connect the two. You can't be looking to the side or talking to someone aside or rolling yourself across the room and then look on the screen and then raise your hand and say, what's going on? Focus. Stay together. Life. The characteristics of life. We talked about it. What are they? Homeostasis. Life keeps homeostasis. That's right. Metabolism. For those of you that don't remember, metabolism is processing energy. Processing energy. So homeostasis, metabolism, what else? What else does life have? In general, what else does life do? Say that again. Reproduction, I heard, is correct. Life reproduces. It makes more copies of this. So I think everybody agrees with that part. There shouldn't be an issue there. No, you're not. It's just doing its thing. That's right. Life evolves. Now, I'm going to tell you that this might be an issue for some people. I'm going to say it again. You just have to understand that that's one of the characteristics listed. Do you have to believe in evolution? Regardless. I mean, evolution is a fact. The part that is confusing to people, or parts that people argue, is did humans evolve? The way that evolution is defined, it's literally a fact. Like we can look at evolution in a test tube and with bacteria, and we can count the genes and the changes, and it's undeniable that evolution exists at the micro scale. The big question that people keep going back and forth is, did humans evolve, etc. We don't have to get into that conversation in this class. You just have to understand what evolution is, okay? So one of the characteristics of populations, not an individual. Let's be clear on that. Individuals do not evolve. Populations evolve. Populations. But life does evolve. All right, what else? Yes, but we're not going to list that. But yes, life dies. Life passes on inheritable information, right? Inheritable information in the form of DNA or RNA. Does everybody agree? Again, very provable. We can take your DNA from your body and we can compare it to your parents. You see that you literally are half your DNA came from mom and the other half came from dad. That's the only place you get DNA is from your ancestors. Information, I'm sorry. I'm writing quickly. I apologize. We have to get through this quickly. There's a lot to do. So inheritable information. DNA or RNA is how we... Then we talk, if you did the characteristics of life and looked at the answers that I posted, you know that life exchanges energy for order. All right. The universe is in chaos and is consistently moving towards disorder. Life does the opposite. Life takes this random set of mixtures and collects them and organizes them. Life is ordered. Life is ordered. It's organized. Which brings us to one other characteristic of life. All life, according to cell theory, all life is made of cells. Now, this is an arguable point. And the arguable point is some people consider viruses alive. They are not cells. Viruses are not cells. You'll understand more what a cell is as we go on, but life is made of cells according to cell theory. Now that brings us to the idea of a theory versus law. We have natural laws. Natural laws are observations of phenomena. Phenomena is another word of saying is happening. Like I throw an apple up, it comes down. That's a law, the law of gravity. Every time something goes up, it comes down. That's a law of gravity. I mean, we can see it. Now, how do we explain it? Through the theory of gravitation, the gravitational theories of Newton is how we explain it. But every time you throw something up, it comes down. That's a law, right? You can see it. You can watch it happen. If I drop something, it doesn't go floating up, right? So that's a law. A law is just are things that we see. Now, theories are our explanations of happenings. How do we explain what's happening around us? We use these things called theories. Theories are very powerful. They allow you to have synthetic shoes. Those shoes you wear are made of polymers that didn't exist in nature before humans made them. Electricity runs through those wires because of the law, because of our theories about how electricity works. Everything around you is made using theories, these explanations. So understand, some people think theories are weaker than laws. Well, I don't know about weaker, but theories are how we explain what happens, and laws are the happenings themselves. All right? So when we see life and we look at all life on Earth, we decided that all life is made of cells as a basic unit, and that's what we call cell theory. So that laws, it's difficult to say laws are wrong, but theories are constantly being proven wrong. In fact, we go ahead and assume that almost every theory we have is not complete. We assume that somebody's going to discover something next year or in 100 years that says, oops, look at what we were thinking. For instance, do you know the Middle Ages? Do you know how what they would do when you had a fever? In the Middle Ages, they thought there were 5 elements. They thought it was air, the Chinese thought 5, I think maybe, I don't know, you can do the research here, 4 or 5. Earth, air, fire, water, and chi or spirit, depending on where you are in the world at the time. So these 5 elements were it. That's all there was. So in Europe, instead of chi, they called it the humors. So those 4 plus the humors. So if you were sick, you had a fever. what did you have too much of? Which of the 5 elements did you have too much of if you have a fever? Fire. You had too much fire. So what they would do is they would cut you and bleed you. Well, they got cooler, but they were dying. But they didn't know. The theory was that you were getting too hot because your fire element was too hot, was too much, so they would bleed you in Europe. Sometimes they would put leeches on you and bleed you that way. Sometimes they would bleed you by cutting your veins and watching you bleed, then seal you up to hold it. Don't let you go too much. They would time it. They would take literally a pan full of your blood out and throw it out the window. And that was their idea of medicine. All right? Yeah.
Isn't that what they did to George Washington after he caught a fever?
I'm not sure if that happened with George Washington or not, because by the 1700s, our idea of medicine was better.
I think it had to be.
Huh?
It was one of them.
I think it was George Washington.
It could have been. I don't know, to be honest.
They killed him.
Yeah, I don't know. But here's what I'm going to tell you. The theories change. As we get more information, our understanding improves. And we get better at what we do. I don't think anybody would argue that medicine's come a long way from bleeding people and putting leeches on. And by the way, leeches are still a good solution to things like bruises. They can take out the coagulated blood. They have anticoagulants in their venom, and they also are painless because they have. In fact, if you get a leech on you, you won't even know it's on you because they numb your skin. So they're very good at what they do. Medical leeches, though, they're grown in a lab. They don't go out in the swamp and collect them. They don't want anybody to get sick from them, right? So leeches are they're natural, and they don't harm you for the most part. All right, they're not like mosquitoes. To my knowledge, they don't really spread disease. All right, so I'm not saying it's good for you to get a leech on you, but I'm saying we do use them, like when a bride gets a black eye because she ran into their door or something, and she doesn't want to take pictures of a black eye, a swollen joint or whatever. They'll put leeches on the eye and drain the sac so that the black eye just goes away. The damage is still there, but the black eye is coagulated blood. You know that? Well, the leech has anticoagulants, and it'll actually suck that useless blood out of you. All right. So, anyways, old theories were wrong, but they were looking at phenomenon, and they were trying to explain them, and they did the best they could. All right. So those are the characteristics of life. So if you're going to take, I'm going to focus on this disorder, the word called entropy. Entropy. Remember, entropy is disorder, a measurement of disorder. The higher the entropy, the more disorder. Life does the opposite. Life takes energy and changes disorder to order. In order to do that, as far as we can tell, you need to create something called a cell. Because if the universe is mostly disorder, if the universe out here is mostly disorders, random material floating in every possible direction, then we have to be able to organize things in here. Inside this space, we call it order. Now, where have you heard the word cell? You've never heard the word cell before? 3 minutes ago. Yeah. I meant, what was the first time? Have you heard it anywhere else? Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. Okay. Have you heard the word cell anywhere in our language, used anywhere? Have you watched a show where they mention the word cell? Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z.
Okay. Have you ever heard of a prison cell? So what is? Okay, a cell phone. All right, that's good. I'm not sure how cell phones work into this, but prison cells. What is a cell? a room, right? A room. So a cell is a compartment room, space that's separated from other things. You need to separate the spaces in order to create, or you cannot create order unless you have something separate from the disorder. That's the only way you're going to be able to do it. So you're going to exchange energy. Energy is going to be exchanged in and out of the cell so that you can create this order. Whether it be a plant cell or an animal cell, you have to be able, in order to organize things, you need a room. For instance, let's go to your room. If you have a room and you all have a bedroom, or at least you share one. My sister, her room was a complete wreck. If you couldn't walk in a room, her clothes were knee high on the floor. You had to push your way through it. You couldn't step or you'd fall. That's how many clothes were on the floor. I don't know if anybody else's room it was like that. Anyways, what do you do if your room is a mess like that?
Clean it.
How do you clean it? What do you do with all those clothes? You fold them, organize them, and do what? And put them where? In a drawer. What's a drawer? A compartment, a cell, a space. The way you organize things is you have to have spaces where you can create the order. It's the only way. Otherwise, its disorder will rule. So the universe is going towards entropy. Life exchanges energy for order. You need a cell to do that. At least as far as we can tell. There's probably other ways. If you read the case study, then you know that there's other thinkings of different ways you can do this. But as we look on planet Earth, all life on Earth uses these cells to exchange disorder for order. All right. So life is also made of matter. And matter is made of what we now know are the true elements. Elements are the smallest. Let me not say smallest. The purest form of something. The purest form of matter. So when you say I have the element gold, that means there's nothing in it but gold. There's no iron in it. There's no nickel in it. There's none of the other elements. There's 118 about, I don't know exactly anymore, elements. It changes all the time, or it changes periodically. 118 elements. You've seen the periodic table, I'm assuming. Here you have hydrogen. Over here you have helium. The first 4 rows are the rows that life is concerned about. The rest of this is just too heavy to worry about. The elements are too heavy. They're not very useful. Life is really worried about the first 4 rows of the periodic table. Let's take a look at an example, chemical reaction, and let's take a look at how these elements are put together. So let's take a look at water. When we look at water, an experiment that I would like to do, assuming we have time, is we can take water and run electricity in the water with some salt. We can add some salt just to help carry the electricity. But we could take water, and water we can break it down into hydrogen gas and hydrogen gas is H2 and oxygen gas. So let's be clear on what I'm talking about here. Water is an oxygen, an atom of oxygen, which is an element. Yeah. It says electricity. Electricity. Water is made of, is a molecule. It's sharing electrons. It's one atom of oxygen connected to another atom of hydrogen, and it's connected to two atoms of hydrogen. How do I know they're connected to two hydrogen atoms? H2. It says H2O. When you see H2O, it's because there's two hydrogens for every one oxygen. So that is water. Now I'm breaking that up on this side. This side, by the way, if you remember if you read the lab, you know this side of the reactants. And then what do the double-headed arrows mean? Why do I have a double-headed arrow? One in each direction. Yeah. That's right, because it's reversible. Excellent. And these are products. I know we didn't finish the lab, we didn't have time, and there was all kinds of... Say what? This class didn't start, but the other class started. Well, that's okay. I'm just saying, you read it. When I say I know we didn't finish it, I meant that as a ninth grade, as an honors biology group, all the classes together, not everybody finished it. Some people didn't start it, it's correct. So then here, hydrogen, on this side, hydrogen gas is two hydrogens bonded together. And oxygen gas, that's a plus. So there's two different things on this side. Oxygen gas is two oxygen atoms bonded together. And the G means gas. The G means gas. On this side, it would be an L for liquid. So liquid water can be broken up into hydrogen gas. Yes, I can zoom out some. And oxygen gas. All right. So what do you think, what do you see as a problem here? What problem do you see here? You should be taking notes. Wake him up. You should be taking notes, writing it down. Did you write what I just wrote down? Did you write down? See, I didn't write it, but did you write down that this means gas and that this means liquid? So you don't get confused when you see it in the book. All right. So what problem do you see between reactants and products? Do you see any problems? There's a big problem there. A giant first law of thermodynamics says that you cannot create or destroy matter or energy. So what's wrong here? It's obvious, or I wouldn't ask you. So look on the screen and tell me, what problem do you see? There's a big problem. I'll wait another minute or two, let you see if you see it. The first law of thermodynamics says you cannot create matter or destroy it. That is the reactants on the left, that's what you started with. The products are on the right, that's what you end with. What is the problem? Is there a problem with what's on the screen right now? I'm telling you there is. What is it?
Ain't no hydrogen.
On which side?
On the product side.
These are hydrogen.
It's not on the reactant side?
There's hydrogen here on the reactants as well.
It changed form.
Say what?
It changed form.
It changed form. That's normal. That's called a chemical reaction. So we expect it to change. We went from one thing, water, to two things, hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. My question to you is, here's my question. We can't create matter, so what's the problem here? Look at it. What's the problem? We can't create it. We can only rearrange it.
It's because it's gas on one side.
No, it could be gas because it's just changing form. It was liquid, but now because these two are connected instead of these three are connected this way, this is a gas and this is a liquid. We'll talk more about why that is later. But my question is, count. What's the problem? Do you see? Let's lay it out. Let's just do it. On this side, I have hydrogen. I'm going to use a different color here. Hydrogen. I have two hydrogens. On this side, I have one oxygen. That's what I started with. I had two hydrogens on one. I started with two hydrogens and one oxygen. Everybody see that? One oxygen, two hydrogens. Now, on the product side, I also have hydrogen and oxygen. I do. On the product side, I have two hydrogens. That's okay. I started with two. I ended up with two. I'm good with that. Do you see the two there? It's actually H2. Do you see the lowercase 2? H2. But then oxygen, according to this, and by the way, oxygen gas is O2. According to this, oxygen, I have two. What's the problem? I only started with one. I can't create anything, so something's wrong. This is called an equation. This is my drawing of what's going on, so I have to improve my drawing. So what I have to do is I can't change this. I can't change the subscript. Those of you that are not paying attention are going to make this mistake on a quiz or a test. And when you make that mistake, know that I warned you not to make it. Do not change the subscript. The subscript, that's the lower little number, that tells you how many atoms of that element that's right before it is connected to the element that's right behind after it. So this says H2, so that tells you two hydrogens are connected to oxygen. If I wrote H2O2, that's not water anymore. That's hydrogen peroxide. I can't do that.
Well, you said don't change the subject.
Don't change the subscript.
What is that?
The little number. Don't change the little number. What we do is we add a coefficient. We add a coefficient. Now you have 4 hydrogens. Now you have 4 hydrogens on this side. Now you have 2 oxygens on this side. On this other side, you also have to add a coefficient here so that makes it 4 on this side. So that makes it 4 on that side. And now you have a balanced equation. That's how you balance equations. It's a lot of fun. We'll have to finish the rest of this tomorrow. I wish you guys would settle in quicker, though, and I wish the technology worked faster as well. Now what you have is you have a balanced chemical reaction. Because I'm adding 2 waters, just like you would add a cup of flour, and I'm getting 2 hydrogen gases and 1 oxygen gas. We call that a balanced equation. All right, so that's a chemical reaction. Now, can I go on? That's just an introduction. We'll come back to the chemistry of it later next week, where we're going to break down what are these covalent bonds, what makes a molecule, what makes an atom, how do you put them together, how do you rearrange them, and how do you know if a reaction is going to release energy or take energy in. In this case, in this direction, you have to put energy into the reaction. In the opposite direction, it releases energy. When you mix hydrogen and oxygen, you get an explosion. So next week we'll have miniature explosions happening in your test tubes, and you're going to make some water. Next week you'll pull water apart, and you'll put it back together again. But for next week, because we're dealing with explosions and fire, you're going to have your safety contract done. You're going to have your safety test done by next Thursday. Or Friday. Friday. Don't even look at me. Friday. As long as everybody, I'm just saying, if there's an individual in the room who hasn't, then we need to get that done before next Friday, so you can do the lab. It's a fun lab. I enjoy it every time. And it works out really well. I'm sure my assistants will enjoy doing it as well. All right. Now, when we look at, notice that I am doing Cornell notes for you. I'm trying to emphasize the reduction. A lot of you don't reduce. When I see reductions that I do in class, but I don't see things that you're reducing, that tells me you're not reviewing. That tells me you're not thinking about what we've talked about. You've been too busy in your side conversations. You've been too busy worrying about whatever it is you're worried about. And you're not taking care of your business in class. That's going to be the conversation I'm going to have with your parents if they come and ask me, my kid doesn't understand. My kid is not getting good grades. I'm going to say, look, they're not paying attention. They're offside. They're off task. Here's my evidence. What can we do about it? So, in any case, don't forget to put the date on every page and preferably your name all over the place. So in case we look at your notebook, when I look at your notebook again, I don't have a question. Excellent. So it's enough to know this, which is basically what's on this board. The elements of life. The elements of life. These are the elements that that all life on earth is made of. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. So tomorrow we'll try to answer that question that's at the bottom, the 4 basic molecules of life. By the way, anybody know the 4 basic molecules that are made of these elements? Anybody know the 4 basic molecules of life, the 4 categories?
Wait, what did that say?
Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. The 4 categories are nucleic acids, DNA and RNA, lipids, which are fats, right? Proteins, and carbohydrates. Those are the 4 categories of biomolecules that we'll talk about tomorrow. Don't worry, this is all recorded, and we'll start from here. Tomorrow's quiz will be what are the characteristics of life? Have a good one. Now, one of the things that we discussed, the question that you had to take home with you yesterday was, what 4 classes of molecules is life made of? That was your question. That was your homework. So now I'm going to pause for 3 minutes. You're going to write them down now without looking on the internet. I want you to write them down. If you did your homework, you have them written down, you may use your notebook. If you didn't, you have a 0. So write it down, put your name in the period at the top, and I'll collect them in 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes starting. Hey Siri, start a 3-minute timer. 3 minutes starting now.
Write it on a different piece of paper.
Howard, good job. Sana, good job. Real easy, right? Erica, Marie, good job. We know who did the work and who didn't. Easy question, but let's go ahead and delve into the details. Oh, hello. So, when we're talking about the four classes of biomolecules, there's four major biomolecules, and you've heard of them probably. Lipids, part of lipids are fats. So you've heard of fats, right?
Yeah.
But there are lipids also form steroids are also lipids. And by the way, there's something called fatty acids. All these are lipids, and there's different kinds. So make sure you're marking down what I'm saying, and making sure that you need to make index cards because you need to be able to use this information to identify in an experiment what kind of molecule you have. Yes. Yeah, grab it and take it and use it and then give it back before you leave. So lipids are one. Proteins are another. Look for it, dear. Look over there. Back there. There's two there. There's two there. There's four here. Proteins, which you've heard of before, I'm sure. Nucleic acids. And finally, the fourth is carbohydrates. I haven't introduced this word yet, but some of you may have heard it before. There's this thing called polymers. All of these here are polymers. They're made in a very special way. We're going to talk about it. This one over here doesn't make a polymer. Lipids are not polymers. But the other three are. And we'll talk about what that is. So lipids. Lipids are mainly, I'm going to use the word mostly, made of carbon and hydrogen. Carbon and hydrogen, the main component of lipids. There is some oxygen. There's some oxygen. And depending on the lipid, depending on the type of lipid, where it's used, etc., you will sometimes have that's right. You'll have phosphorus. Sometimes you'll have sulfur. And sometimes you'll have even nitrogen. All right, so sometimes especially the sulfur and the nitrogen, there are a lot of lipids in your body that have phosphorus. But mostly, again, the main characteristic of lipids, in fact, we call these things, another word for these, are hydrocarbons. Because they are mostly made of carbon and hydrogen. Mostly. Even the ones that have nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur, they're mostly carbon and hydrogen. And most of the lipids are going to be long chains of carbon and hydrogen. We'll get into details as we go on, but you need to know that much, that lipids are made mostly of carbon and hydrogen. Lipids are nonpolar. You don't know what that is yet, right? We'll talk about it. Nonpolar. So that's what you need to have on an index card. You need to start getting into your mind right now for the next test, for the first test you have, for the next quiz, certainly, for the next test, absolutely. you need to know these four biomolecules and these characteristics that I'm writing here. So if I were you, I would be writing these on index cards. Yeah. I would be writing this information on index cards. On one side, I would put lipids. On the other side, I would put all this information or split up into 2 cards, however you want to handle it. I've seen kids do it electronically on their phones. That's fine. My feeling, the research shows clearly if you write it down on cards with a pencil on paper, you're involving more parts of your brain and you tend to remember it more often. And if you write your own versus using someone else's, again, you tend to remember it more often. You don't know what nonpolar means yet, but everything else there you should understand. Is that okay? Is everybody okay with this so far? Any questions or concerns? Everybody understand what I wrote? It's neat enough? Okay. Let's go on to the next one, proteins. Proteins are, as I said, they form polymers. Again, you don't know what that is yet. You will in a minute. And they're made, which means, by the way, I should just put in parentheses, they have a monomer. No, I should say they have monomers. We'll talk about that in just a second. Proteins are made of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen. All right, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. Sometimes, or some, you know what? I should just put sulfur as definitely one of them. But no, here's the thing about proteins. They have no phosphorus. This is going to be very key. It lets us understand a lot when we're trying to figure out what's what. They have no phosphorus. So notice they have all the other ones, but none of the proteins have phosphorus on it, in them. Proteins can be polar, nonpolar, ionic, acidic, basic. So they can be all kinds of different, they can have all kinds of different properties, and we'll talk about what allows them to do that very soon. Today, actually. And we're going to start with proteins, I think. Nucleic acids. So that's it for, by the way, there's the monomers. Again, we'll talk about what those are in a minute. There are 20 different monomers. That's why they can be any of those things, because there's 20 different ones. You need to think, say that again? Acidic, this is acidic. Ionic, acidic, or basic. So they can act like acids, they can act like bases, they can be nonpolar, they can be polar, they can be small or large, they can be any kind of shape. They form all kinds of shapes. Proteins are the structural. When it comes to function, I guess I should mention function for lipids as well. When it comes to function, lipids are structural. In other words, they help build your body, your cells. Your cells' one of the main components of your cell are lipids. Lipids are long-term storage of energy. when a plant wants to store energy a long time, it puts it into oils. Oils are fats. Oils are lipids. All right. So sunflower oil, corn oil, we use it to fry food. That is the plant's long-term storage form. We have fat on our body. This is our fat. This is our lipid. This is our long-term storage of energy. It can also help insulate. When you see a walrus and a whale, they have something called blubber. It's a type of fat that really is dense and allows them to keep warm in the cold oceans. So fats can do a really good job at insulating your body. She explains why larger people like myself are outside and the cold. You'll see some of us walk around no problem in the cold and you're freezing, shivering, turning blue, and we're just looking at you like, why are you cold? And then in the heat, in the hot, you guys are running around in the heat. You guys are running around with hoodies, and I'm sweating in the shade, wondering what the heck is wrong with you. My body fat insulates me a lot more. Fat is less dense than muscle. So it's easier to float. It's easier to float in water. Thin people find it more difficult to float in water. Dense, yeah, dense. You know, you remember density from middle school? Like more stuff in the same space. Okay, so that's pretty much for fat. Proteins, they're more dense as a whole. Like muscle is made of protein, for instance. A lot of your body is made of proteins. Proteins are the functional unit. They do involve some structure. They're involved in function. Proteins do most of the work in your body. They do most of the chemical work in your body. Muscle, as I said, is made of protein, so you move because of protein. Enzymes are made of protein, so you do what you do because of proteins. Your hair is made of protein. Your skin is made of protein. Bones are not made of protein, no. It's a different substance. But proteins make up a lot of your, well, I shouldn't say that. Bones have protein in them, but not. Do you have a tardy pass? Did you sign in? Fill out the tardy slip? Could you sign in to the, why are you staring at me? There's a little table there, and it says tardy pass, remember? You've been tardy enough, you should know. All right, nucleic acids. There's two types, right? Who knows what those two types are? I know you know. That's right. DNA and RNA. These are also polymers, so they have monomers. They have DNA has 4, and they are A, T, G, and C. Adenosine, anyways, you'll see. 4 different monomers. That's it. You'll need to know these very well. You'll have to read genetic codes and distinguish between 2 different genetic codes. So you might as well start getting used to knowing what these are. RNA has 4 monomers as well. It's A, U, G, and C. It's the same 4 except for the T is a U in RNA. They have, these are not elements. Does everybody understand that? These are not elements. A, T, G, and C are symbols that represent monomers. Am I being clear? So don't get confused. Nucleic acids, both DNA and RNA, are made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus. But they have no sulfur. That's going to be key. Again, when you're trying to solve problems, when you get problems on quizzes and tests, the fact that there's no sulfur in DNA can be very useful to know. And the fact that there's no phosphorus in proteins is good to know. Carbohydrates. What is the function of DNA and RNA? DNA is where you keep your inheritable, something that you can inherit, information. That's where you send your information from one generation to the next, is in DNA. RNA has basically 4 functions. It actually does a lot more in DNA. It can tRNA, there's 4 kinds, transfers amino acids. You don't know what that is yet, you'll learn very soon. RNA, rRNA makes up ribosomes. Those of you that did cells in middle school probably remember ribosomes as being an organelle. rRNA make ribosomes. Ribosomes are made of RNA. So in fact, RNA can act as an enzyme. Again, you don't know what that is yet. I'm just giving you information. It'll all make sense, I think, as we move along. Okay? So RNA can act as an enzyme. There's another form called mRNA. It acts as a messenger. So when you see these, and I use the words, hopefully they won't be new to you. It'll make a little more sense. If you, again, put them on index cards, know what they are. These 4 kinds: tRNA, rRNA, mRNA, and the general RNA can act as an enzyme. So 4 different purposes of RNA. DNA only has one purpose, and that's to keep your information safe. Don't you think that you want to make sure that the information that makes you who you are is kept safe in a vault?
Yes.
Right? That's precious. In the cell, the most precious thing you have is your DNA. Everything else is about getting that DNA from one cell to the next cell. Most of this is extremely important. All right. Carbohydrates, your favorite. Your absolute favorite. They are sugars. All right. They have their single form, which we call them sugars. Another word for sugar, before I go on, is saccharide. Has anybody ever heard of a saccharide? Yeah. You might have heard of a word called saccharin. It's a brand name for a synthetic form of sugar. So saccharide is the word that we use for sugars. So anything that has only one, that does not a polymer, only has one unit. So if I had a bunch of single units, we would call it a monosaccharide. An example of a monosaccharide would be glucose. Glucose is a single unit. Looks like this. That's it. Single unit monosaccharide. There's another monosaccharide that you should know. So I think everybody's heard of glucose, right? By the way. Okay. There's another one you probably have heard of is fructose.
Yeah. What's that?
Where do you think fructose comes from?
It's glucose.
Think.
Is it fruit?
Fruit. Yeah, fructose comes from fruit. Very hard, much harder for you to digest than glucose, by the way. And where you find a lot of fructose is in soda. They use high fructose corn syrup. What that means is there's a lot of it. High concentration of fructose. That's really not good for you, just so you know. It does damage to your liver. It obviously stimulates the whole issue of diabetes. So be careful with drinking those sugary sodas. It's not just that they're full of sugar, it's that they're also full of fructose. And that can cause a problem. There's another one you probably have not heard of that's going to be very important to you is ribose. Glucose and fructose have 6 carbons. Ribose has 5 carbons. This is going to be important, so remember that. If I'm not putting information down, you don't really absolutely have to know it. You can know more. There's a lot more to learn, but I'm giving you the bare bones that you should put on index cards and make sure you know. You've heard of another one that I know a lot of you have heard of is lactose. You've heard of lactose? Where is lactose found? Milk. Why do we call it lactose? You're right, it's in dairy, milk and such. Why do we call it lactose? Because, yes, in part, it doesn't always come from a cow. It's also found in human milk and in any mammal milk. Because it's lactated. What does lactated mean? It comes from a breast, right? Babies drink it. So baby drinks lactose. Babies are born, when babies are born, I say babies, I mean a baby cow, a baby goat, any baby mammal. Baby whales drink milk. Did you know that?
No.
Whales, they go underwater, they suckle at the mom's teat. We call it a teat. Not the other horrible word. That other word should not be used for a human. Is that clear? The word is teat. I didn't say any other word. Let's not bring that up. That's the official word for animal breast. Are we clear? Yeah. All right. So baby whales do suckle at a mother's teat, and mother does lactate. They produce milk for the baby whale. How much milk does a whale produce? A lot. I have to imagine gallons, right? I've always wondered would it save money to go and harvest milk from a whale instead of a cow, right? I don't know. I've always wondered about that. Anyways, lactose, ribose, fructose, glucose, really big deals. By the way, the reason that most adults really should not be we're not made to drink lactose after we're grown.
That's why a lot of people lactose
That's why most people can't really drink a lot of lactose as you're an adult. It's not made for us. It's made for what? Babies. Babies have enzymes that help them digest it. As you get older, you turn those enzymes off. You turn those genes off because you're grown. Now, we kind of cheat a little bit. We can turn them back on, but it takes a while to get them turned back on. And some people are born with a deficiency in that. So they have to take lactate, which is the enzyme that babies have that allow them to digest it. You don't know what an enzyme is yet, so just bear with me, okay? I will explain it to you. But just know that that's why people get upset stomachs, milk farts, even to the point of diarrhea if they drink milk. Most of you never drank whole milk. Anybody ever here drink whole milk?
No, I drink
All right. Most people drink 2%, some people 1%, but very few people drink whole milk. Almost no one has drank milk right from the cow.
Why would you do that?
It's very dense, has a lot of lactose in it. It's fresh milk, you can drink it. That's where all milk comes from, or at least the milk we drink. Mr. Mendoza's room, may I help you?
You gonna be on the toilet all day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I appreciate it, yeah. I appreciate it, but may I tell you though that we got an email from Maria, and she would like to make sure that we have something in our presentation to the parents, because I know you're she says she might show up. I don't know what that means, but she said it to everybody, not just us. So I thought maybe I'd make a poster and to put out in the front of the office. Yeah, I finished the letter. I sent it to you, but I don't know if you want to change anything. And all right, and maybe part of the presentation, in case she shows up with somebody and she knows that we mentioned it during. All right, I'm sorry to do that, but I was like, if I don't tell you, it's going to be a mess. All right, bye bye. All right, lactose. So these are the 4 sugars. These are 4 monosaccharides. There's a lot more. There's galactose. There are babies that are born with being galactose intolerant. They used to die, actually. It's called maple syrup disease. Do you know why?
Oh, because
Now think about being a doctor in 1700, 1600. You didn't have a lot of labs. You didn't have a lot of tests. You did not have a lot of chemical tests. But you have a baby who's sick. What did doctors do? What in ancient Greece, in the Middle East, in China, what did doctors do? They looked at poop, right? To see, and it studied poop because that came out of the body, right? It didn't actually, poop, by the way, does not actually come out of your body. It's just what's left over from what you didn't digest, what you didn't take into your body. Poop is what's left. That stuff that comes out of into the toilet from your butt, that was never in you, all right? That's what's left over from the stuff that you couldn't take into your body. What comes out of your body is called pee. Does that make sense? So urine comes out of your body. So doctors today, we still do it today, by the way. We still look at poop. They'll take a poop sample, they'll smear it, they'll study it under a microscope. Back in the day, they didn't have microscopes, right? They didn't know what bacteria was, but they could tell if somebody was sick by looking at the poop, at least to some extent. And if it was the color, the smell, the texture, what was in it, right? All tells you a lot of information. What else could doctors do? They could smell it, they could feel it. Of course, they probably didn't use gloves back in the day, but they wash their hands. Today we have gloves. They didn't have a lot of gloves, like rubber gloves. Do you understand that? Like rubber gloves is it's a modern privilege. So they tested the poop. What else would they test? How would you test the pee? You look at what? Color. Okay, what else? Smell. You know when you eat asparagus, it smells like asparagus, right? You ever eat asparagus?
I
Oh.
love
Amazing.
asparagus.
If you ever eat asparagus, you can smell and go pee afterwards. You'll smell the asparagus. So you can actually smell. You can smell a lot. You can learn a lot from smelling pee. Guess what else they did? Not drank it, but they did taste it. They would dip their finger in the pee and taste it. Again, they didn't know anything about viruses. They didn't know anything about bacteria, correct? Hey, you think it's funny, but it actually saves lives. It saves lives. If the pee is sweet, they knew they had what they would call wasting syndrome, which today we call diabetes. So if the urine was sweet, they knew the person had a problem. Most people with diabetes back then died. So knowing it early, being able to diagnose it early, say, look, you got to eat less sugar, that helped, but they still probably died early. Because remember, they didn't have insulin. They didn't even know what that was. So then, babies would be born very sick. And when you tasted their urine, it tasted like maple syrup. That's because they could not digest a sugar that's found in milk. It's called galactose. Galactose is something, and lactose is actually not a monosaccharide. Lactose is, all right, so anyways, lactose is a bunch of different other sugars, but when you look at these sugars, what you're going to find is that we can connect them in a lot of different ways. These that we're talking about here are really about energy source. They're about energy, short term. If you eat too much sugar, it doesn't stay as sugar. It gets turned into a polymer or it gets turned into fat. If you eat too much sugar, it does not stay sugar. You can't. It'll kill you. Yeah.
What is that first thing you said?
What? Polymer? Oh, I'm going to get into that. It's going to take a minute for me to describe. But a polymer is, have you ever built a Lego set? Anybody here built or seen a Lego set get built? Well, a model of a Lego, if I built you from Lego blocks, the model, the statue would be the polymer. Each individual block would be a monomer. All right, so polymer is when you take a bunch of units and stick them together in a certain way and you get something big. Okay? So that's what it is in short. I'm going to go into detail on it. But probably not today because we're running out of time. So short term, the monomers and lactose, they're used as, and actually I should say disaccharides as well. They're mainly energy. For instance, table sugar is a disaccharide. It's two monosaccharides put together. So when you eat table sugar, it's not glucose. Glucose is only one of the two. You create plants or we refine it from sugar cane or beets, and you can make it's a disaccharide, two monomers put together. But you can form polymers, a bunch of them put together. And when you form polymers, they can do long-term, medium-term, to long-term storage. Of energy. The examples here would be in humans, in mammals, we have something called glycogen. Glycogen is stored in the liver in humans, and it's just stored temporarily. If you get low blood sugar, your body releases the sugar from where? From the liver, from glycogen. So you take a bunch of glucoses, and then you take a bunch of them and you stick them together. And as you stick them together, they form these big long chains, and you store them in the liver. Does that make sense? They form these long chains, and you can just keep them in the liver. And they're really long. Your liver stores them for when you have low blood sugar. You can quickly release sugar into your blood so that you don't pass out. That's important. That's in animals. So glycogen, this happens in animals. Glycogen is not found in plants. Plants use something else. They put it in their roots, in potatoes, in beets, in yams. Are beets? Yeah, beets are roots as well. What they do, it's actually not beets, but in yams and in potatoes, they use something called starch. You've heard of starch? That's just more of this medium or to long-term storage. We steal their starch. We steal their sugar by digging them out of the ground and frying them in a pan. We call them French fries. But all we're doing is frying sugar. French fries are sugar. Huh?
Like starch, it could bring up your iron.
It can bring up what?
Your iron.
The potato skin has iron in it, but the starch is just sugar. Starch is just sugar, and anything that's starchy is just sugar. Batata, I don't know if anybody is familiar with what that is, but it's a root. Candy yams, they're all sugar, starch. But they don't have to be, you can take the same sugar that you eat, you can put it together in a different way. Remember we said Legos, you can put them together in different ways, right? You can put them together in a certain way, and you get something called cellulose. This is very important. You're writing on it right now. You're writing on sugar. That paper is made of sugar. That stool you're sitting on, the wooden stools you're sitting on, they're made of sugar. Wood is made of sugar. The sugar is called cellulose. Almost nothing can break it down. There's only one. Even trees, when they make this, they can't eat it. They can't break it. They can't break it up. Plants, everything that the structure of a plant is made of cellulose, made of sugar. But they can't break it down because they put it together in a way that it can't be broken down by water. The only thing that can break it down is a tiny bacteria that has a special enzyme that can break it down. So it's made of sugar, but almost nobody can eat it. There's only some fungi, fungus, and some bacteria that can eat it. Termites cannot eat wood. But in their guts, they have a bacteria that helps them eat it. They'll chop it up, but then in their guts, they have a bacteria that helps break down the wood into sugar. That's why they eat the wood, because it's made of sugar. So consider that sugar is not always something to eat. So cellulose is structural. And that's a short breakdown of the biomolecules. Tomorrow it looks like we'll get into what polymers and monomers are. It's a little messy. Sorry about that. So tomorrow we'll get into what polymers and monomers are. Okay?